Why do you think as mamas, we feel like we have to carry on all of the things?
I think there's so many reasons.
Was there a point in time where you thought, oh my gosh, will I ever have children?
We're never going to buy a house. We're never going to have babies. We're never like all of these things.
Your life is not going to be the same.
But you grieve and you keep going.
Will I be loved and accepted if I am this way?
Find your baseline.
Hello. Welcome to the Brave Table. I'm your host, Dr. Neeta, and this is your destination, your oasis to be all things just a little bit more brave in your actions, in your relationships, and in your life. And I have a question for you, mamas. Are you braving burnout? Have you experienced burnout recently? Maybe it's within your family. Maybe it's all of the throes that motherhood comes at your way. Is it okay for you to be calm? Is calm even in your vocabulary? Is calm even an image that you can think of? Well, my guest today has done just that. She has survived burnout as a former recovering type A high-achieving lawyer, and she has charted a journey as a mama of two during the most expansive, crazy, chaotic years of raising her two kids. She's just moved, charted cross country all the way through the other side of the country, as well as closing up her successful law firm to focus on helping other people step into, and mostly women and mamas who are also type A goal-getting mamas, step into a life of freedom in embracing their emotions, embracing their emotionality as a nervous system and somatics coach. She is also, and none other than, Michelle Grosser. And our episode today is really all about helping you connect with those deeper parts of yourself, the shadow parts of ourselves that we tend to not embrace. And it's all about how we can unbecome or become in the next iteration of our lives with ease, with stillness, with slowness. In this episode, we are going to dive into what makes us so chaotic, what makes things chaotic and heavy, and how we can actually alchemize that into stepping into the best versions of ourselves. So if you are a mama, if you are struggling, if this is a busy time for you, if you are navigating career or career change pivots, and you are looking for two besties that are gonna love on you in this episode, you are in for a treat. So let's welcome Michelle Grosser of the Calm Mom podcast to today's episode. All right. So Michelle, I'll have you pick a card to start us out.
I love this.
Yeah. And you can go with the affirmation.
Oh, this is perfect. I don't need to do anything. I'm celebrating my stillness. I'm celebrating ease and flow today. I'm being gentle with myself.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
I feel like
amen.
Wisdom does spew from these cards.
Yeah.
So how is that landing in your body today?
That is, well, I was just saying, I left my kids with their dad and my dogs and everything, all of the boxes and all of the suitcases, and drove here by myself. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do what I always do. I'm not going to play podcasts the whole way, right? I'm not going to listen to an audiobook.
Because we feel like we have to be learning or consuming.
Yes. And I'm like, I'm going to challenge myself to 3 hours of stillness. Like, how uncomfortable would that be? I think I can do it. And man, it's just like, how much my soul needed that. And then to pull that card after, even this morning, I'm like, I'm just going to listen to music because I'm always just in that consuming and the information and the stimulation. And I think it was so needed in my body to just turn it off for a minute. So it's landing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that because I feel like, as mamas, I feel like we're trying to squeeze every moment and every minute of every, I don't know about you, but I have 10 downloaded on Audible or whatever, Apple books and all the parenting books and then the relationship books. And, because you also have a podcast too. So we're constantly consuming and preparing for our guests, but also it's like, okay, how can I stay in the know with all of the things and all of the no's? And you being a former attorney, I'm sure it's all in your head as well as, you know, myself, a former doctor.
Yeah.
So how does that relate? Because we're trying to undo that.
We are. I know my husband always jokes. He's like, you're going to die because of the avalanche of books on your nightstand. It's like getting higher and higher and higher. I'm like, I've become really discerning about what I allow myself to consume. And I've become really good at tailoring what I'm consuming for what I need right now. Like, what is it that I'm specifically focusing on in my business? And then I'm just consuming content around that instead of like general business content or parenting or, you know, what it looks like for whatever's happening. So I think that's been helpful, but even more so for me, I think in the last probably 5 years, it's really been a shift from always referencing everything on the outside and telling me what I should be doing and how I should be doing it, and really starting to learn to like trust my intuition more. So I think there's like a tension there with like consuming the information, but then also not over consuming it and being so ruled by like what everyone else says and how they say I should do it, and really starting to like be like, okay, what feels good for me? What feels aligned for me? What do I actually want to do? Which is new for me.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
It's so powerful because in the art of the unlearning, we get to unravel and we get to, you know, clear all of the years and years and years of programming.
Yes.
So let's talk about that, because you were a successful trial attorney, and I can only imagine as a goal-getting, type A achiever, mama, badass.
It's like you've been making me cringe now.
You had your practice. So take us through that journey, because I can only imagine a lot of the moms in our audience, Brave Table fam, you know, we've been through the braving. We've been through braving the hard. And some of us are probably in it now to see, is that the path that I really want for myself?
Yeah.
And it's not something that we're told when we're younger, because when we're younger, we're like, no, you should be the top of your class and all of these things. Yeah. And then, you know, the accolades and the chase.
Yes.
And so I see the younger girlies now, and, you know, I feel like a lot of times they're at a crossroads of, but my parents want me to do this, but I definitely don't see myself doing this for a long term. Yeah. And what was that like for you?
Yeah, I think I just was that quintessential, like, I'm the oldest of 5 kids, right? The oldest girl. Like, I was always just taking care of everything. I was, you know, on the honor roll and on the varsity team and like all these things. It was just a way of being. And it was like, I was probably so annoying, you know? I like think back, I was like, oh.
I see you. I see you, mama. Yep.
And then I went to college at 18. I was like, deuces, I'm out of here. I grew up in northern Maine on a farm in the middle of nowhere. And I moved to Milwaukee, which felt like very exotic for me. Oh my gosh.
I can sense the like Midwest vibe from you. Like I'm like, okay, I love it. Okay. And we're just meeting each other for the first time. Yes. So
but then I graduated in 2008, and like I was working at Harley Davidson. I was like, I don't really know if this fits for me. I'm just going to go to law school because I have good grades and I don't know what else to do. And
you go from Harley Davidson, like baddie, to law school?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It was awesome. And I think one of the greatest gifts that I've received in hindsight is like how naive I have been about so many things because I had no lawyers in my family. I had no idea I don't even know if there was a lawyer in my town growing up. Like that's how small I was, right?
Oh, wow.
So like I show up for the like the entrance exam for law school. I had not studied for that. Like I didn't know you could like buy resources and study. So I just show up that day and I'm like, I'm here to take the entrance exam for law school. And
like the LSAT?
The LSAT, yeah. Like I didn't even know what a good score was. I was just like, I know I need to take this in order to go to law school. So that was like kind of like my whole story, right? It's just like happenstance that I get wrapped up in all of this. But obviously there was so much under the surface that was driving a lot of that. And I did it. I got the job at the big law firm, and you know that those those early associates that are expected to just sleep under their desk and get all the things done. And I did it and I did it. And
so that is true.
It's true.
All of it is true.
It's all true.
You're working 100 hours a week.
Yeah. And that's not enough. And you're just like copying papers and,
and you're sleeping there in your suits and you're dressed like a man in your suits.
You got your toothbrush in your desk.
Oh my gosh. So it's all true.
A lot of it is true. It was true for me. And then I had kids and I was like, holy flipping moly. Like it just rocked me. And I think as someone who thought she was so prepared, you know, for all the things, like I took the classes, like in theory, I know how I'm going to nurse this baby. Like I've got this down, right? I've like,
read it in a book.
I read it in a book. And then I had my daughter, my first, and then I had another one 16 months later, my other daughter. And I just remember like feeling so unprepared for that. In my marriage, most of all, probably, but then in like my body, my emotions, and then the pandemic hit. So it was like this whole unraveling of like my identity, I think, first off. But then really this practice of kind of looking at everything and being like, whoa, like, how did we get here? Is this even like what I want? Is this for me? Does this still serve me? Which is a really humbling process.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, on every level.
Yeah.
Because I can only imagine what your kids were 2 and under during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a lot.
Let's talk about the unpacking of going from 1 kid to 2.
No, it's not I swear I have like, I call it holy amnesia. Like God's just like giving me a blackout of those years because it's so flipping hard. And I remember my husband and I were married for 8 years before we had kids.
Oh, wow.
And like, it was awesome. It was awesome. Yeah. Right?
Of course.
Travel. We'd go out to eat at 11 p.m.
Sure.
Like all great. The things, you know.
You're going, and you're going on walks at night.
Oh yeah.
You're spontaneous, going down to the city or
doing
wherever you
want. Yeah. You know, it's amazing. And I remember hearing all of these mentors in my life and people I really trusted being like, marriage is a lot of hard work. You got to like, you know, all this stuff. And I'm like, no,
did you believe that?
It's really not. Right. I just didn't buy it. I didn't see it. I'm like, it's actually really fun. Like Jeff and I have a blast together. We get along so well. And then we had like kids. And I'm like, holy shit, who is this person? Like this is really, really, really hard. And I think that was the biggest hit that we weren't prepared for is like all of the, I think unrealized and unspoken expectations I had for him and for how the whole thing was going to look and feel and for how I was going to show up as a working mom. I knew it would change, but I didn't realize how much.
And what were like some of the initial things? Was it harder? Was it harder with your first daughter, or did it just everything come crashing down when you had your second? Because you had them really close together.
Yeah, like I remember this, and this is like so funny, the timing. My daughter was like 3.5 months old. But it was like that first, like, I don't know if you can remember this after your kids too. It was that first day where I'm like, I showered, I had makeup on, I actually did my hair, and I'm like, whoa, like, are the tides turning? Like there's a shift coming. And I remember walking out and I remember my husband being like, okay. Like, and I was like, I finally feel like myself again. I kid you not, like 3 hours later, I took a pregnancy test and it was positive.
Oh my goodness.
I was like, here we go again. Like I was just sitting in the bathroom sobbing. So I think because they came so quick, it just felt like a tidal wave. There wasn't a lot of transition between 1 and 2.
Wow.
But it got wilder, you know. I don't know if it was the same for you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think that's when I had a lot of, I completely resonate with, you know, everything that you're sharing, because it's exactly what I went through. And I was living in LA at the time, and we were global for a bit of time, my husband and I. And when we settled in LA, I'm like, okay, we were the first out of our friends to have children, out of our close inner circle to have children. Yeah. So they are all kind of still doing their single things, coming over to our house because we have, you know, we host a lot and we're like one big happy family. Yeah. And our friends are coming at these odd late hours because that's what we did.
Yep.
just a few months back, but now things were different. And I just felt like I had this swirl of emotions of just like the resentment of, and it was like unprocessed resentment. Cause it's like, oh, well, you guys think you could just come over whenever and we can't do anything. And you know, it's like, oh, you want to go and watch a movie, you know, at this time. And there was such an adjustment period. And I think what I wasn't prepared for was that transition to a family.
It's a grieving process.
It is. It's a huge grieving process. And I've grieved a lot for a lot of things in my day.
Yeah.
But this was something that I was not prepared for by any means, because like you said, it's like, all right, I've checked the box and all the things, success. And, you know, I've had some life hits as well. And so check those boxes off as well. So, but the motherhood was so like beyond my comprehension. And I think for a very long time, I was resisting. Yeah. And I was like, nope, we're going back to the old life. Nope, we're going to be one of those families that's going to take baby with us into the city at like 9:00 at night. What were we doing? I don't know.
Yep.
But it was because the lack of the grieving of like your life is not going to be the same. Because a lot of people don't talk about the issues that they have in the marriages that come up.
That's right.
What was that for you both? And, you know, what did you find in yourself that was going to keep you the calm mom?
Yeah.
if that's even relevant.
Yeah. So many things. So I think one is that, you know, I was the oldest. So I think by the time my parents had 5 kids and I had the awareness to see how my dad was around everyone, he'd had 5 kids. And I didn't really have that realization as I walked into expectation for what my husband would look like as a dad. So I figured he would be up changing the midnight diapers and doing the feedings and, you know, caring for me in the way that I didn't even know I expected, but that I certainly expected. So there was, like, you talk about resentment. There was so much resentment bubbling up there. I think too, I remember a night where I was up feeding the baby. And I remember I was just like crying, sitting in the living room. And I just had this thought and I was like, I have never felt more alone, and I'm never alone anymore. Like, I cannot be by myself anymore. And I feel so lonely. And then I think there was resentment about that, because same as you, like, we had a community of friends that were so close. But there's a separation that kind of happens, I think, organically, right? Where it's like, they're not inviting you because they don't want, it's like they don't want to assume,
right?
You know?
They assume, they think you're busy, or they're like, oh, we don't want to intrude, or we don't want to bother.
Yeah.
But then you take that as like, oh, it's a personal hit.
Yeah. Like, you're like, I need you.
And they don't even know. And I don't know but they don't know how to even show up or be there for you.
That's right.
Especially if they didn't grow up around young children, or if that's not even in their periphery.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things too, where it's like, you don't really, you know, like my husband's stepmom has a pug. She's never had her own children, but she like calls it her child. And I'm like, it's almost the same thing where it's like, I get it. Haha, it's funny. But like, I think a lot of my friends, it's like, you don't know unless you're in it also, like you're experiencing it or you've experienced it, how to help and show up in those ways, I think. Yeah. So I think that's part of it. And I think the other thing for me, and I think, this was a big thing, is that we had 5 miscarriages.
Oh, wow.
By this point. So then you have what you've been like trying so hard to have. And then it's not all rainbows and butterflies, right? And it's like, I think there's so much wrapped up in that, because then it's like a guilt or a shame that you're like, it is beautiful, but it's also really hard.
Well, it's the guilt. I mean, did you have the guilt around like, should I even be feeling these big feelings?
For sure. And mind you, at that point, I hadn't started doing like any of this work that I'm really doing now. So I was so disconnected from my emotions. I was so disconnected from my body. So I think like I had this peripheral understanding that I wasn't, quote unquote, feeling well. But I think it terrified me, because, you know, I was the woman who was more comfortable in like a courtroom with, 60-year-old bald men than I was like helping a friend who was, really going through something and experiencing a lot of emotion with that. So there was just a lot of like dissonance there for me, which was tough.
Wow. And so you're at this breaking point. Everything is kind of in a swirl.
Yeah.
And what were then some of the initial steps that you took to kind of take control and reclaim kind of the season that you were in?
Yeah, I think, it wasn't a rock bottom by any means, but there was almost more of an urgency because I had kids and I was like, man, I don't want them to have memory of me being like, oh, well, my mom was just always like busy, or my mom was just always kind of in a bad mood, or my mom was just always tired. I'm like, I don't want that to be their story. I don't want it to be my story. Right. And the pandemic, when they were like, I guess 2 and 3 was just starting. And I remember just hearing so many women in my circle who had like now started having kids and were all feeling the same way. And, the helper in me was like, I want to help them. Like, I want to help them too. Because I remember it was just like not long ago. And it was the pandemic. My firm was like closed down. Everyone was working from home. So I had like this new time, I think, and this new like space. And I was listening to some podcast, and there was a woman on it who I was like, I want to be in her space. Like, I want to learn from her. Mm-hmm. This is so brilliant. And I signed up I was actually just listening because I realized she was on your podcast, Alexi Panos.
Oh yeah, she's amazing.
So I signed up for Elementum. It was starting in like 3 days.
Oh wow.
And I had I thought, again, this like back to the naivety, I thought I was going in there to get like some tools to be able to help some women. And this thing for 1 year just like rocked my socks off and gave me a whole like 180 paradigm shift on how I saw myself and my purpose and my family and my kids and my own like traumas and things that I didn't even realize that were having such an impact. So I guess like long story short, that kind of like was the catalyst to learning, to like relearning. And I think, back to where we started, it wasn't even so much like learning. It was a lot of unlearning. It was a lot of unbecoming. It was a lot of like peeling back a lot of the layers.
Oof.
Yeah.
And I mean, the peeling back and the unlearning is like the greatest gift that I think as mamas we can give ourselves.
Yeah, and our kids and everyone. Yeah.
Oh, and our kids. And so, and I will put Alexi's episode in the show notes. Love her. And what were you then were you at this crossroads of like, should I stay in my law firm or should I try this new adventure? I don't know what it is. Mm-hmm. Like, when were you faced with that decision, and what were the steps that you kind of began in order to kind of see if that was for you? Yeah.
I think, thankfully, I've always been fairly comfortable with the messy. Mm-hmm. I think I just grew up with a lot of chaos. And like, for better or worse, it didn't really scare me. So it was always like, I was like, I'm going to run the law firm and I'm going to start this podcast. I'm going to run the law firm and I'm just going to see if anyone wants to hire me to help coach them, right?
Yes, you are.
I'm just going to do it because I'm just going to do it all because that's what I do.
Wait, when's your birthday?
January 14th.
Okay, you're Capricorn.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, it makes sense. It all makes sense. And so then I just started, this is what happened. And this was so cool. I had a deposition in the morning and I had a one-on-one coaching call in the afternoon.
Oh my gosh.
Talk about, man, it was just so good. And it was the kick in the pants that I needed, because I went into this deposition and I was deposing a female business owner. And her team had it was a negligence case. Her team had done something that they shouldn't have done. And I was there to prove it, right? Do my job. So she comes in this deposition and I'll never forget. She sits there and she's upright and she's answering my questions. And I am me. Like, I'm me. Like, I'm not being rude to her. But I have to do my job. And as I'm just kind of like poking and prodding and finding the holes and pointing out the things, like, I just watch her body language. and her shoulders start slumping and she starts kind of like slouching forward and her head comes down and her eyes start coming downcast. And I'm like, I left that deposition. I'm like, I did my job and I just feel so icky about it. And then I had a coaching session in the afternoon, which was just life-giving, right? And I was like, wow, like to have both of those back to back, like this world needs amazing lawyers and they do. And I don't want to be one of them anymore. Like that was like the moment for me. I'm like, wow, this part of my life is just so like, there's no life in it. And then this part feels like so life-giving and I'm just going to choose. And it became this process of like, how do I wind one down and really ramp the other one up?
Wow. And I mean, because not many people are able to do two completely contrasting ventures all at the same time while also raising littles. And I know on your podcast, and we'll link our episode in our show notes that I was on yours as well. You help moms kind of, walk through the burnout. Was there at any point you were feeling burnout or dysregulation from, holding two very simultaneously yet big doors that were open?
Yeah. Before I really got into the coaching, when I was in like the building of my own law firm, I was in such a deep state of burnout and I didn't even know. I think I was in it for so long. I think the mental and emotional symptoms I was feeling, I just come to associate with like, well, that's just life as a working mom. Like, of course, I'm just going to be tired all the time. Of course, I'm just going to be, perpetually busy or feeling irritable or like whatever it is, right? Like that's just the cost, which isn't true. And then the physical symptoms started to show up and it was like IBS out of nowhere and all these gut issues. And my hair is like, I'm like, is this still postpartum? Like we're 4 years in, my hair's not growing back yet. What's going on?
This is postpartum forever
or
what?
Forever, the perpetual postpartum. And it was, and then I'm just so grateful of the timing because I really learned how to regulate my nervous system or what that might look like. I really learned what it looks like to push back against decades of like people pleasing and perfectionism and what it looks like to set and hold boundaries that I don't feel guilty over. So like I was doing that work as I was, navigating all of this transition. So the timing was really helpful and supportive for me.
Wow. Why do you think as mamas, we feel like we have to carry on all of the things?
Yeah, I think there's so many reasons. I think one, it's societal, right? It's put on us. It's like, and I think if we push back against any of that, there's almost like a shame that comes on us, right? Like we should be the ones that are taking care of all of the things and being those human givers that are just like giving of everything without any protections for ourselves, right? Or counting the cost. I think we care a lot, which I think is so beautiful and so good. Like it's also why motherhood is so hard because we just care so much. Like I want to do so well, right? Like I want to do a good job, but I got one shot at this. And I think we tie up so much of our value in how much we're able to give and help others. And those are all beautiful things. But I think like anything else, you can have too much of a good thing.
Right. Yeah. And I also think that, it's almost because we can hold so much and our capacity to hold is so big that, our capacity for healing and unlearning is just as big. And I know that with this walk of healing for you, you have really unraveled your own capacity for holding big emotions.
Yeah.
And how does, the emotions, and you talk a lot about somatics on your podcast and energetics, how has that played as a role in your household as a mama, as a business owner, as someone that's charting this brand new path?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I knew I had to go first, right? So I'm like, I have to become comfortable with all of this discomfort so I can turn around and show my kids how to do this. And I remember as I was learning about emotions and what it would look like to have healthy emotional expression and not be suppressing and repressing all this stuff that I had for so long. I remember like I was the kind of woman that was like proud that she didn't have a lot of emotions. Like I was like, I don't cry at movies. I'm not one of those dramatic women. You know, I'm like, whatever stories I was telling myself. And then I remember one day I was like, this is not good or healthy. Like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. This is actually, I think it's strong, but it's actually like holding me back in a lot of ways. And I went to my husband, and like, God bless him, he's the best. But I was just like, I'm gonna practice being more emotional. And I'm like, it's like so dumb. But I told him, I'm like, I'm going to practice being more emotional. So like, if we're watching a sad movie, I'm actually going to try to like cry. Or if we're like in an argument, I'm actually going to try to like raise my voice or something, like stuff I just had never done. And you know, everyone has their own edges, right? That was just one of mine.
Yeah, I love that.
But I just like, as uncomfortable as it was, I practiced being seen and like allowing that to come out without labeling it and judging it and all the crap that I had done for so long. And then my kids came around, and you know, kids have a lot of emotions and really big emotions. And I started to notice like the patterns coming up in me, where like, you know, my 3-year-old's having a temper tantrum about something, and my instinct is like, you know, here's a cracker, or like, here's a toy, I'm going to distract you, or, you know, making a silly face and trying to cheer them up. And I started to realize like, whoa, I'm robbing them of the opportunity to learn how to sit and ride this wave of what they're experiencing.
Yeah.
Being with them in it, like holding that space for them, not interrupting the cycle of that emotional expression, because that's what happens so often, right? As parents, is like we interrupt it and then the tantrum goes on forever.
Yeah, we're shh.
Yeah, over soothing.
Stop it.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the chocolate.
Take it and go. And that was big work for me. And I was like, whoa, I can only do this because I've allowed myself to get so uncomfortable and practice it myself.
Yeah.
It was tough.
It's so tough. It's so tough,
Yeah.
especially when there's an easy route.
Oh, for sure.
What's, you know, that easy route. And I don't know about you, but like the pushback I had was definitely with my in-laws.
Oh, tell me.
So with my in-laws, it's been, and of course my elders, because my family comes, or tiger parenting, the whole thing, Asian, Indian upbringing.
Yeah.
And it's the hardest thing to unlearn when you're also trying to live with intergenerationally.
Yeah.
And then you're reminded of, oh, that's what I had when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But it's in your face. And so there was kind of this, you know, you're saying one thing, but then they're having their own reaction to the meltdown.
Yeah.
And it's because they were also shushed and no, what are people going to say if you keep crying in the middle of, you know, the grocery store, stand up. Okay. I'm going to buy you the toy. Yep. And so it's just like, we had to have so many sit downs with our parents. And then at the end of the day, it was like, wow, they're going to parent the way that they are. And we can't, like, we'll either have to accept it or minimize the connection, or have our kids navigate like, okay, this is what how your parents are raising you. And then when the grandparents come in for the weekend or whatnot, like, so it was so tough. And I think that there's no black or white, you know, but it was just like the biggest thing, because you're faced with it. Yeah. And then your own reactions of like, okay, they're doing that again. They're giving the chocolate behind my back. Or the gummy bears. At least give the organic ones. Why are you? So it's just, now it's a funny thing. Yeah. And we make light of it. Yeah. The kids are older, but I remember in the beginning, it caused so much of an emotional that I needed to just sit with and be like, all right, what battles am I going to pick?
That's right.
And if it's, if you're definitely giving them the thing with all the dyes and stuff, that's
then we'll have to talk. I do have a line somewhere.
I have a line. You're going to give them the lollipop, give them the ones that are from this place. I will get you the candy to give them. Yeah. So it's been, and you kind of go through those phases. Yeah. But I feel like, wow, it's such the bigness of teaching people how to allow for the big expressions of emotions.
Yeah.
Because this goes back generations, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And it's not like, they don't mean to do it. Like they were just never given an outlet to cry, to emote, to express.
No, they mean well, actually, right?
They mean well.
They do mean well.
They mean well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so true. I can relate to that in a lot of ways. And I think for me, part of what it was like, one, can this be okay? Like, can I get to a place, like you were saying, where I just either like accept it, pick my battles, whatever. The other thing that I've been noticing that's been really helpful for me is I'll remind, especially as they're little, I'll remind myself of how like skewed my perspective is right now. Because it just is. Like I can look back, obviously, and I have, the present moment and the things that I know now. But ultimately, like so many of the things that I think are so important, they probably aren't. Like even like you were saying, like we just laugh about it now, right? But man, in the moment, like there's things for me that have felt like such a big deal. And I've had to just remind myself, like, your perspective is really skewed right now, Michelle. So just chill out.
That's such a good reminder.
Yeah.
Because do you think there is an element of control with that?
An element of control with that being so triggering and like, yeah, for sure. I think that, we, as we start to have our own children, whether it's conscious or not, we do have a list of things that like, I want to make sure we do this in our family because this was really important. Or like, it's so important to me that this doesn't happen in our household because I've seen how it's impacted me or it made me feel really unsafe when I was a kid or, whatever it is. And I think that as human beings, when our nervous system senses, right, any threat to safety or security or any threat to like, well, then you're going to disapprove of me or you're going to judge me or I won't be accepted in the same way, our natural instinct is to control, whether we realize it or not. And it's kind of insidious in these little ways.
Sure.
But I think it is related to control.
Yeah. Well, and it's it's almost what I'm hearing from you. It's like the underbelly of acceptance.
Yeah.
Will I be loved and accepted if I am this way?
Or if my kids are this way? And how about separating that?
Oh, yeah.
That's a big one.
What does that say about me if my kid is having this big meltdown in the front of wherever it is? Yeah. And how does that reflect back?
Yeah. And then it goes on, right? Then what does it say about me if I do give them the treat and give in? Or what does it say? It's like, it's this rolling ball of just like the add-ons that come with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you say to new mamas that are navigating this right now? Find
your baseline. I think that is a season postpartum that's not, it's like the opposite of overachieving, like whatever that would look like in postpartum. Like find your baseline. Like I need to get sunshine on my face to feel like a human being. I need to like, brush my teeth and do whatever. I need to like speak to someone face to face that's not my husband, in a place that is not my dirty home full of like diapers and throw up right now or whatever it is. Find your baseline and make sure that those things happen. And I think just a constant reminder that it feels hard because it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not that you're not cut out for it. It's not that you're doing it wrong. It's not that you got the kid that's like defective and just cries all the time. Like it's just freaking hard.
It's hard. And I don't think we really normalize that it's hard. And, I want to circle back to your point of, wow, 5 miscarriages.
Yeah.
And when we're on this journey to conception or when we're on this journey to growing our family, and then we have these unmet expectations, things kind of don't happen for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Timing, universe, God, whatever.
Yep.
And then you have this bundle of joy.
Yeah.
And of course you're that meter of, wow, I worked so hard to get this. This is what I want. This is what so many women who can't have what I have want. And then we shame ourselves to not going there to feel those big feelings. What do you say to those women who may be feeling that and going through that?
I think to start to unravel the stories that you're telling yourself about it. Because I think there's a part of us that knows all the things, right? Like I knew cognitively and like intellectually that it was hard and that it was okay to feel how I was feeling and that there was nothing wrong with me for having 5 miscarriages and that my husband still loved me as much, like whatever the stories were, like I knew those things to be true. And yet a part of me was still really sad about all of those things and really struggling with all of those things. So just being gentle, I think, with yourself and allowing whatever comes to just be present because it is. And it's so much, it takes a lot of courage, right? Talk about the brave table. Like that takes a lot of courage to allow yourself to sit in that. And I think there's a fear of like, especially for women who do all the things, there's a fear of like wallowing. Like that was a big fear for me. Like, I don't want to just be like the pity party girl or like, even if I'm like by myself and what, like it's just not me, right? Like the stories I'm telling myself about this. But the truth is that it was in there, whether I was addressing it or not, right? It was like living in my body. It was living in my subconscious. So just being gentle enough with myself to just experience what was coming through for me. And I think it's different for everyone.
Was there a point in time, because, you know, that's 5, that's huge. And was there a point in time where you thought, oh my gosh, will I ever have children?
Yeah. After the second one, I remember we were living in this little loft in downtown Miami. And my law firm was like just taking off. And my husband had just started this restaurant and we were in this apartment. And I just remember like having another miscarriage. And that one, we were like almost through the first trimester. It's like, we almost made it.
Oh my gosh.
And I just remember like I was about to leave for work in the morning and my husband could tell, he's like, what's up? Like, what's wrong? And I just lost it. And I was crying. And I was like, we're never going to buy a house. We're never going to have babies. We're never, like, all of these things. And he's like, whoa. He's like, you, like, this was his response to me. And it was true, but in the moment it didn't feel really helpful. So it took time for me to process it. But he's like, you look around you. You think that God can't put up 4 walls and a roof over our head and like bless us with the family that you want so much. Like, I love you so much. Go to work and we're going to like talk about this when you get home. And I look back and then like it happened again and it happened again and it happened again. And then the faithfulness just came through, right? And it's like, now I have a house with 4 walls and a roof over my head. That's mine. And I have 2 children. And it's tough. Like I remember even after the first miscarriage, I remember the doctor I was working with at the time, she told me, and I'll never forget this. She's like, one day soon you're going to be holding your baby in your arms and you're not even going to remember this, is what she said. And I was like, wow, like, is that really true? Like, it just was so painful in the moment. I'm like, there's no way that can be true. And it wasn't true. So if anyone's ever told you that, it's not true, but you grieve and you keep going and, you know.
Was grieving because there's, you know, and obviously with the spiritual work that we do, it's, you know, many times they say the soul wants to come through, but for whatever reason, it's not the time, or, you know, parents aren't ready, or the situation, it's not ready, and so looking back now, did you think, was there spirit guiding, and what was different when you did eventually get pregnant with
oh wow, that's so good.
The 5th or the 6th?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think there's a perfect time per se, or at least as we perceive it, right? Like you hear people, it's not the right time to have kids. I'm like, I don't know if that ever exists. And I know that through those 5 miscarriages, there was so much healing. There was so much healing in our marriage. There was so much healing.
Because that's enough to break up a marriage.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I think it probably might have had it come earlier. My husband's dad passed during that time, really suddenly, like really tragically. And they had a really complicated relationship. And I think that also brought a new dimension of like healing, and then also almost like a freedom for my husband, that he probably really needed to be the dad that he was going to be to our girls. That wouldn't have, I mean, I don't know what would have happened otherwise, but it wouldn't have happened beforehand, you know? So I think that's true. And I think, you know, we can look back and connect a lot of those dots, but we don't have that privilege in the moment, you know? We just have to trust.
Yeah. So, and then I guess one more question to wrap that up for anyone who is in that season now. What advice would you give them if that time hasn't come for them yet?
Yeah. I think a lot of it was, or what I would tell them is, can it be okay if it doesn't happen? How do you get to that place, right? Can my marriage thrive if we're not mom and dad, right? What does my identity look like? And how can I find contentment in what is if I don't have the role of mom, like biologically or however that shows up? And those are really scary questions to ask and to navigate. But I think whether that's your story or then you end up having children, however that looks, I think just that exploration can bring a lot of peace and a lot of healing. And even when even if the time does come and you do have children, I think it's still really a good reminder that that's still not our only purpose, and our identity can't be wrapped up in it, and all the things, you know, that can be easy to get sucked into. So I think just really taking a look at, you know, with you and your partner, like, can it be okay if this doesn't happen for us? What do we need to do and explore and heal so that it can be okay? What would it look like? And all of that while remaining hopeful.
Oh, wow. So beautifully said. I want to segue into, you know, you are now a nervous system and somatics coach. And how are you helping women with their burnout symptoms in motherhood, in the throes of the messiness, and braving their next chapter of themselves?
Yeah, I think so much of it is that unbecoming. And I think what that looks like practically is, I mean, it's a few things. I think one, it's really teaching women to trust that it's safe to slow down, right? A lot of the women that I work with, that just feels so unsafe for so many reasons. So trusting that and learning how to do it. How do we, you know, embrace, make space for moments of stillness when there's just like, it feels like chaos all around us, right? There's so much to do. How do we connect with our bodies? I think for so many of us, for a lot of reasons, we've become disconnected from our bodies, and we don't even really know what it would look like practically to start to reconnect. It's like vessel we're stuck in, right? That we live in. So I think that's a big part of it. I think the emotional expression is a big part of it. I think, especially with anger, that's a big one that I see that, you know, we just don't know what to do with it. We're on one of two ends, I think, of that spectrum. It's just like how I was, where I'm like, oh, I'm super chill, never angry.
I'm never angry. I don't get that way.
Not me. Or we're just angry all the time. And like both are not healthy. Right. So like learning what to do with that, right? Like how to access it in a way that doesn't feel so scary and ragey and like all the things. I think those are like the biggest, like those are like the deepest works, I think. You know, a lot of other things you would think of, like how do we cope and manage stress, and what are the mechanisms that we've developed and the patterns we've developed with that, and what are the boundaries that we hold, and all these different things. But I think really just having the courage to slow down and just be is so healing.
Yeah. And on that note, where can we get a hold of, I know you have you have something special for our audience, and where can we get a hold of you?
Yeah. So my podcast is The Calm Mom. That's the best place to find me. And I have a 5-part private podcast all about healing burnout.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So
that's so juicy.
It's so good.
Oh, yes.
So you can tune in, you can learn like how severe, like how big of a deal is this burnout? And also I walk you through what I've developed as a 6-step framework to heal from burnout. So a lot of the things we were just talking about. So I can give the link for that. You guys can check it out in the podcast, and
we'll put it in the show notes.
Perfect.
Amazing. And as we get into our rapid fire spill the chai round, you can answer this as short as you want or as long as you want.
Okay.
Your favorite nervous system regulation practice?
Shaking.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Do you do this with your kids?
I do it with my kids all the time. I do it so much that it's funny because we just moved into a new house, and my office, like before we lived in a house in the suburbs with space. Now we live in a house downtown Houston where my neighbor with their kitchen window is like 3 feet probably from my office window. And we didn't have blinds for the first like few weeks, but I'm like, these people must think I'm crazy. At any moment they're looking over and I'm just like shaking all around my office, shaking my arms, shaking my legs. My kids are joining me, shaking all over.
Okay. Any favorite music that you're doing this with?
Or it's usually like a early 2000s hip hop playlist. Yeah.
Yeah, those are so good.
They're so good. My kids are like repeating some of the lines. I'm like, I probably should start rethinking this. But it's for me. It's not for them.
We have Barbie Girl on repeat right now. And I'm like, okay, yeah. Favorite calming ritual for you?
Early mornings. Yeah, it's my favorite. I wake up really early before anyone else, and I used to hate people that did that. And
how early?
Now I'm one of. I just wake up early on my own now. It's like 4:30.
What?
Yeah.
What time are you going to bed?
Early, like 8:39.
Okay.
Yeah. And I go downstairs and I make my tea and I put on the fireplace and I just like sit there and get ready for the day and set an intention. And I usually journal and I'll probably get some work done. And then by the time my kids come down at like 6:37, I'm ready.
You had
I'm ready
your
for
alone
what the
time.
day is. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful practice.
It is.
I'm not there yet. They are, they're just with me. They're just with. And sometimes I'm like, okay, I think I got it. It's like 5:45. Nope. Somebody's up. And I'm like, oh, well, hello.
Oh, fancy meeting you here. It'll get better. It'll get easier. I'll sleep more.
It's fun.
It's coming.
And what does it mean to be brave?
I think in this season for me, bravery is really been looking like leaning into a deep trust. And I think part of it's a trust in myself, and not so much to like have all the answers or do all the things, but just trusting that I can let go of my expectation of like how it should turn out or what it should look like or what should happen, and just trust that like I have either the resources or the resourcefulness or just, I don't know, the grit or the resilience or the support system or like whatever it is, that I'm going to be okay. Like, can I just truly trust that and do some scary things in that, you know?
Do some scary things.
Do some scary
in
things.
the process.
Yeah.
What are you braving currently?
I'm braving a lot of separation from big parts of my identity. I think like I underestimated how much my ego like loved saying that I was a lawyer. Yeah. And like even like meeting new people here in Houston, we just moved and people are like, what do you do? And like I'm like, I'm a lawyer. And my husband's like, you're actually not anymore. Like you need to stop saying that. You know, we had planted a ministry in Miami. Oh, wow. And that was like a huge part of our lives the last few years, and like separating from that and a lot of the identity that came with leading in that space. Even like I just started homeschooling my kids, which feels like, I'm like, if someone had told me that a year ago, I'd be like, you're nuts. I remember even the pandemic, like they were young. I wasn't homeschooling them. I'm like, I can't be around my kids all the time. Like, that's just not for me. And now I am. And I'm like, who is this?
We're going to have to do a part 2 on
this crazy girl. So like, yeah, you know, it's just a constant like death to old self, and then a new self rises, and then death to old self and a new self rises.
Is it because you never thought that you would be in the place that you are at now?
There's a permission slip with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Or like the preconceived notions of what we thought,
yeah,
you know, the success or the fulfillment
right
would look like.
Yeah, there wasn't the crushing weight of expectation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's true. I think that creates a lot of space to take risks and try it out and reinvent yourself and make really big, messy mistakes and keep going. And I think that's true. Yeah.
One word that describes this season.
Ooh. I'm expectant.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm expectant. I feel like it's been a lot of like winding things down and over the last year, like packing up in Miami, selling our house, moving to Houston, closing the law firm. And now it's like, it's been so much planting, and now I'm feeling expectant for the harvest.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yes. Wow, Michelle, what a pleasure to have you here. Such an honor, and your grace, your energy, your wisdom. I'm so excited to see what's next on the horizon. Thank you for pouring into our community.
It's been my joy. Thanks for having me.
Wow. Okay. I know you're going to want to run and follow Michelle. You can go ahead and do that. She's on IG at It's Michelle Grosser, and her podcast is the Calm Mom Podcast, which I will link in the show notes. And I will also link 3 additional episodes if you are curious about just braving motherhood, braving the messiness, braving the chaos. Michelle shared some incredible wisdom. I'm also going to share with you, she has her freebie as well, where you can actually heal your burnout. She has a private podcast, and I'll also link that in the show notes. Michelle's website is michellegrosser.com. Go ahead, let us know what you loved about this episode. Tag us at The Brave Table and at Neeta Bhushan. If you're watching this on YouTube, what are you waiting for? Drop a comment below. And if you haven't already, and this gave you some value, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It helps us grow the show more than you know. It means so much to me that you continue to tune in week after week. And if you haven't already, please share this with a friend, a family member, a bestie, somebody in your friends group, the moms group. We could all use a little bit more help in being just a little bit more brave. I will see you next time.